My guest today is a very special lady. It's been quite a while since we've spoken, actually, and it's very timely, I think, that we're speaking now with so much going on around the rollout of 5G in this country, but also around the weather. Because you will be aware, if you're listening to the programme in the UK or in Europe, that massive flooding is a huge problem in Yorkshire today after an enormous amount of rain, it must be said, fell in a very short space of time. 8 inches of rain in around 4 hours, which has caused catastrophe for people in certain parts of North Yorkshire. And of course, Sky News and the BBC are running stories, and they have been for many days, talking about climate change and how we are doomed and how our summers are going to become much warmer and much wetter at the same time. No matter what the weather event, it's being linked to climate change. But is somebody manipulating some of those weather events? Is that a possibility? So much to talk about with my guest. She's a writer, a lecturer and a teacher, and she's written a couple of outstanding books which I recommend you check out: Chemtrails, HAARP and The Full Spectrum Dominance of Planet Earth, of course, from a few years ago. Recently, Under an Ionized Sky, From Chemtrails to Space Fence Lockdown. And I know she's currently writing or about to complete writing on a brand new book, which I'm really excited to hear about. I'm going to tweet out her website as well, and you can find it. You can go there and bookmark it if you haven't been on it before. Delighted to welcome back to the show our old friend Elana Freeland. Elana, thanks so much for coming back. How are you?
Hey, Richie. Good to hear your voice again.
It's lovely to hear from you. It's been too long. I'm sorry about that. No good reason for that. You're a busy woman, and but it's nice to have you back, Elana.
I don't know how you do what you do. It's just amazing.
Oh, you're very kind. Thanks very much. I've got a very big mouth. That's what it is, and I just like to talk. But I like to listen. Hey, listen. This weather, and the extreme weather that we've seen in the United States, in California, the Pacific Coast, fires over here, a lot of heavy rainfall. We were told by the British press that it's climate change, and I know you won't know this because of where you're based, but our news organisations have begun to do a very extraordinary thing. Rather than just report the news, they've begun in the last couple of years to make documentaries. So what they do is they do 30 minutes of news, and then on the half hour, so like 2:30 p.m, 3:30 p.m, they run these documentaries that they've made, telling us, Elana, that we're all doomed, that all of these weather events, rainfall in the summer in the UK, thunderstorms, are down to man-made climate change, and we're screwed. What do you think? What's really going on?
Well, in that case, it seems so obvious after all the decades I've spent studying the controlled mainstream media that you're being plied with fear, and that makes sense because they want people begging for security, begging for someone like the state to take over. Here it's a little different. The approach is a little different, but and this is such a vast land with so many regions in it, in one nation. Each place that has its media is getting tweaked a little differently, just as they're tweaking the weather a little differently in each region. I mean, I'm constantly fielding emails from people who, the recent one was really, I could have laughed, but that wouldn't be polite, that President Trump had ended the chemtrails, and we were having clear skies. So just to appease the members of my closed Facebook site, I posted a message that everybody was to report in about their weather to see what the lay of the land was. I probably heard from 6 or 7 regions, even a few from Europe. And as I thought, each one of them differed. Some of them were heavily chemtrailed, some were not. Some were experiencing this wonderful summer heat. Some were experiencing way too much not wonderful heat. So it's the same old, Richie, in my opinion. Forget that term climate change. It sounds so neutral, as if no one has their finger near the button of this weather, this geoengineering equipment that is throughout the upper atmosphere and on the Earth. So that's what I say in the recent book, Under an Ionized Sky, and I'm sticking to it. But what I would say, and I was just composing an email while I was waiting for you to call me, I would say that I have noticed over the last 8 or 9 years that I've been paying very close attention to the weather patterns and the political patterns, which have to go with the weather patterns, that now each season has a theme. It may sound incredibly hard-hearted, but that is the way these people are who are running this machinery that I have now called the space fence because of how all-inclusive it is, and we'll talk about that. They are following different themes. A long time ago, we'll remember the hurricane theme. We'll remember...
We've lost Elana momentarily there. Don't know what's happened there. Try and get that back. Hopefully it's just a minor drop. It happens sometimes with the old Skype, it drops out. So we'll disconnect and reconnect. That sometimes works. And hopefully we'll get her back. If not, we'll take a bit of music and we'll try again. Very interesting. Why would that happen now? Let's try that again. Give me a minute there and we'll try and get her back. Elana Freeland, by the way, her website is elanafreeland.com. If you haven't checked it out before, check it out before. Wow, well, it's telling me my internet has gone down. That's very strange, and there's no reason for that to happen. My internet has gone down. I'm still recording away, but my internet has gone down, and I'm sure I'll be getting complaints now on Twitter and all the rest of it. But for some reason, the internet has dropped out. Let's try that again. Ordinarily, now I would just take a tune and just jump straight back into the call. Let's see, can we get Elana back on the line? Elana, 1,000 apologies. It was my internet died. My internet in the studio here just died, so it's not any interference.
I can't tell you how much trouble I'm having. I'm amazed I'm still online.
Oh, well, I can only imagine. There are people who would prefer that you weren't doing what you were doing. I have no doubt about that. But no, I think it's pretty innocent. Very unusual because I've got a very strong setup here in the studio, but it did just drop out momentarily. My apologies. We were talking about weather themes and you were talking about hurricanes.
Did I get that far?
You got as far as that, yeah, and then you just dropped out. But again, that was my fault. So okay. Hopefully we'll be fine. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Elana.
I'll take it. Yeah, having watched the patterns over almost a decade now, I would say that each season sort of has its theme. And it's important for people to realize this. While we're being tweaked with fear, and while they're able to operate regionally where we are not aware of another region and what they're going through, and so we can't unify, we can't collect our data in a unified manner in order to see the patterns, at the same time, they're pursuing different aspects of the technology in order to master it. And people need to understand that a lot of this is still experimentation. They certainly are have a complex machinery on the Earth, above the atmosphere, both, and they are learning to use it with the ionospheric heaters, tweaking the ionosphere. Now with the solar minimum, there's all kinds of opportunities to do solar experiments as well. And this morning I was listening to one having to do with a big hole that has appeared in the sun's upper atmosphere, and how we're going to get solar winds, we're going to get a lot of storm, we may get an EMP. It's like a picnic and a feast for the scientists who are on board with what Catherine Austin Fitts rightly calls the secret space program. They are pursuing matters that have to do with space, with launching into space, with the possibility of humans making it beyond the Van Allen belts. I mean, I bring in that idea that this is not just about controlling the Earth. This is about controlling the solar system eventually. So with that context of a larger context, we can understand that what we really, really need to do is to get hold of this technology in our minds so that we can allay the fear, so that we can allay all the physical things that follow from being in a state of fear and anxiety, and take good care of our immune system, take good care of our health as we're riding out this transition to the space age. That's how I look at it.
When what you've described there is incredibly reckless. So you have existing weather patterns because the Earth has a climate and wind, and things are always happening. And you believe that existing weather patterns are being manipulated by scientists who are still, to a large degree, experimenting. That's incredibly reckless, Elana, isn't it, if it's going on? Because they obviously can only speculate as to what the result of the experimentation will be. It could be utterly catastrophic for people.
Yes, it could. And I'm sure that this is something that keeps some of them up at night. But for the most part, they certainly know, and I can understand this, that they have to go beyond the laboratory. They can only do so much in a lab. For a long time, they were doing lots of plasma experiments in labs. Now they have the entire atmosphere, because that's what I mean by under an ionized sky. The atmosphere now is ionized, it's electrified, it's battery ready, it's antenna ready for a lot of experimentation, including plasma, including learning to create Alvin waves, learning how to master the connections we have to our star, to the sun, the Birkeland currents. There are so many exciting avenues to pursue for these scientists and for the globalists that basically fill their pockets and protect them from any legal control over what they're doing. So they're operating in a large theater. It's an open field experiment, and unfortunately we're part of it because we're breathing in all the nanoparticles that they need in order to keep this atmosphere ionized. And we're breathing in other things that various scientists now see an opportunity they can deliver to us through aerosols and through GMO foods and through vaccination. So yes, and that's kind of what I'm saying. People used to say to me, how do we stop this? How do we stop this? Well, I've never been someone saying that I know how to stop this. I have no idea. I don't think we can. I think we have to learn to ride it out and take care of ourselves and understand our condition. And that's, to me, a huge step because they're constantly tweaking people's fear through the media.
Elana Freeland is our guest, and Elana's website is elanafreeland.com. Get on there and check out the books, by the way. Elana was very kind enough to send me copies of the books before we spoke about them in the past, and they are brilliantly researched. I'm not just saying that, they really are. Because, you know, Elana, this particular programme gets a lot of people listening to it who ordinarily get their news from BBC or Sky, so they're very sceptical. And I like that, and I like the fact that they listen anyway, and they don't, run away and scream abuse at me or my guests. They listen. But they constantly come back to me and they say, Richie, okay, I look up in the sky and I do think, yes, those trails, they are there all the time and it is a bit strange, water vapour. But they say to me, please point out to your guest that not a single pilot has come forward and said, yes, I have piloted one of these planes that has had a load of chemicals for geoengineering. You guys speculate, and you might be right, but you've not got a smoking gun. You've got no proof of these programs. And I've just got to acknowledge that some of those listeners are listening. And even though I disagree with them, and I believe that you're very much over the target, Elana, I do want to acknowledge them. They say, look, where's the bloody proof that they're running this agenda? They couldn't do it without us finding out.
Well, sorry to say, there's plenty of proof. The question is how you can get it front and center for the public. What media will put these things forward? I mean, I'm thinking of a video I saw at least a couple of years ago by an Italian pilot who came forward about what he was seeing being loaded into the planes that he was flying. There was plenty of that, of the hearsay kind of thing. And then if that's not enough, you can go for the patents. Now, true, the patents can sit in patent offices for years and nothing will happen. It doesn't mean that the patent has been fulfilled in a product. But if you really put the pieces together, and of course that takes a lot of time, which is what people like me do, right? I spend my entire life scotch taping together the picture that has been spread all over the place but lacks a coherent context by which people can understand how vast this program is. I mean, I'm constantly reminded of when Goebbels, the propaganda minister of Hitler in Nazi Germany, when he talked about the value of the big lie, that a big lie is the one that you want to tell if you're the state and you want the people to believe it. All you have to do, he says, is to repeat it over and over and over and over, and people will believe it simply by dint of repetition. And that is so true. This climate change, carbons, those are contrails. Those are nothing more than water vapor. I mean, we don't even have fuel in our jets anymore, civilian and military, that is not loaded with chemicals. How can we possibly think that those trails are water vapor and ice crystals?
That's a brilliant point, my friend.
Unbelievably ridiculous. I have so far beyond that I'm constantly surprised that it's even coming up. But a lot of people don't have the time, don't take the time,
too stressed,
and the research, to really follow this through. If you do that, there's plenty of proof.
Hey, what you said there is really connected with me. You talked there about the chemicals in the fuel. Now, this has only occurred to me today. That's got to be connected then to what we know as aerotoxic syndrome. I've had some wonderful women on the program. Air flight attendants, women,
definitely.
Who, right. So you've got passengers getting sick on planes. You've got air flight attendants getting sick on planes. That's quite amazing. Thanks for that. I want to also mention, a number of people were very intrigued by Donald Trump's name coming up in it in the conversation. Elana mentioned earlier on that there are people who want to believe that Donald Trump is this guy who's going to destroy the deep state, and that he's getting rid of chemtrails. Are we there? Are you still there, Elana? She might be gone now. Oh, there she is. She's coming back. Yes. I think it might have been me again. I apologise for that. I was mid-question, Elana. I'm sorry. I don't know what's happening. I think it is my end. I just hope now it's connected again, and let's hope it stays connected for the rest of the broadcast. Thanks for your patience. No, I was going to ask you about because Trump came up earlier on. And these people who seem to think that Donald Trump is draining the swamp, which I think is nonsense. And they believe that, chemtrails are less because Trump is in charge. Of course, I don't believe that at all. Here's the question. Are people on Donald Trump's level? This might sound like a trivial question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. People like Donald Trump, people like the Prime Minister of the UK, Boris Johnson, Baby Trump we're calling him. Are those guys aware of the geoengineering agenda, or is it way above their pay grade, Elana?
Well, it's a very good question, I think, because a lot of people seem to think that a president or a prime minister runs everything. And when you think about it, you'll see that can't possibly be true. They're in office. Well, I don't know about the PM, but I do know about the president. In office for a majority of, for the most, 8 years, and the other people that are in Washington, the bureaucrats, the true bureaucrats, I call them the Politburo bureau, like in the Soviet Union. They're there for a lifetime, and the president in America generally spends the first 4 years pleasing the people who put him in office, and then in the second 4 years, if he makes it through that re-election, then he can only get a few of his, maybe a few precious ideas that he wanted to bring, they might be allowed. So that said, these presidents may not, and the PM too, may not be debriefed fully on a lot of the technology. I'm remembering here in America when Trump entered the White House in 2017, how his wife refused to sleep in the White House until it had been thoroughly debugged. I thought she was brilliant in
Very
that,
smart.
because that is certainly the case of the White House. And so has Trump been debriefed on this tech? No, I don't think he really has. I think he's very caught up in the secret space program idea, the solar system idea. He's making a name for himself in history, blah, blah, blah. As far as having any control over the geoengineering going on, I have not seen any proof that he has any control or full knowledge at all. Does that mean that he would protect the people if he knew how we were paying and how we were enriching the pockets of the medical industry and big pharma by our health issues now that are chronic? Chronic health is really the name of the game in America. And you think about it, why would an industry like the medical industry or big pharma, and that includes UK as well, even though it's national health, it doesn't matter. Why would they want to serve your health? It seems to me they'd want to serve a long-term illness so that they would keep that profit flowing. So I think that I don't look to Mr. Trump for much of anything, and certainly not to stop the geoengineering. No.
Good stuff, Elana. Elana Freeland is our guest. Go to elanafreeland.com. The time is coming up for, it's about a minute to the top of the hour, coming up for 6 p.m. Here in Salford and Greater Manchester. A terrifically well briefed lady is Elana, been researching this stuff for a long time, deals in what she can prove, not conjecture, and I really like that. Check out Chemtrails HARP and the Full Spectrum Dominance of Planet Earth, which came out a few years ago, and recently Under an Ionized Sky, From Chemtrails to Space Fence, Lockdown. Do you want to give a definition for clowns like me, Elana? What is no, seriously, what is the space fence? How could you make it? How could you simplify that? And how is it connected to 5G, which has landed now? It's here, and that's the way it is. Like it or lump it, it's here in the UK and in the United States. So over to you.
Right. All right. So let's start with the space fence. It is, the patents for it are owned by Lockheed Martin, the number one military contractor corporation in the world. With a close second coming, I hear, by a Chinese corporation. So we see how that's going. Lockheed Martin's videos will lead you to believe that the space fence is simply a couple of installations on the Earth, one in the Kwajalein Atoll in the Marshall Islands, the other in Australia. That couldn't be further from the truth. This space fence initially came from what we called the Strategic Defense Initiative back in the 1980s in America. And that was under President Reagan, Vice President George H.W. Bush, and Secretary of Defense Dick Cheney. At that time, the SDI program, which we immediately called Star Wars because the Star Wars films had started to come out in 1977 and seemed so outrageously science fiction. And then the SDI program was merely at that time, we were told it was a missile defense system. There was a strand of radar installations draped across the United States in the South Midwest area from coast to coast that were watching the skies, not just for space junk, but for incoming missiles, et cetera. It was a Cold War still, right? So it kind of disappeared, the SDI program. Under Clinton, he'd renamed it the Ballistic Missile Program, and it went black. That's what it did. It went black because that was just exactly the time that Bernard Eastland's patent for HAARP came forward. And HAARP is the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project up in Gakona, Alaska. It's a huge basically microwave heater, but it's an ionospheric heater. And its software makes it so that it can target tremendous energy into a small area of the ionosphere and stimulate more ions, pop electrons off of atoms and turn them into ions, positive and negative, and that this was going to help America, was the story told to us, help America communicate with its submarines on the other side of the earth. And so that a lot of millions went into it, but eventually in 2013, that was after, at least 15 years of testing, possibly a little more than that. The Air Force, U.S. Air Force, admitted that it had been about controlling the ionosphere, and I'm quoting there. So it supposedly closed down. It didn't. It was moved on to University of Alaska at Fairbanks, and they were supposedly running it. Maybe they are. Doesn't really matter in America anymore with our universities. They're all controlled by the military anyway, because they all have really expensive labs now, thanks to the tax monies coming from the military industrial intelligence complex. And so when someone says that a university is running something, it may sound very kind and gentle and just for the students, et cetera, but we all know better now that our university system is no longer what it once was touted as. So now comes the HAARP has been successful. We now are getting a lot of ions. We can create ions in our own atmosphere. The ionospheric heaters, of which there are many, not just HAARP, there are many, and they're much smaller, more tactical. They're mobile. And they can be used in concert together in what the military calls ionospherometry. I think that's how you'd say it. But it's basically, it's interferometry. That's what it is. And they can use this as a weapon. They can mobilize these ionospheric heaters to send beams over target areas and to produce storms, to turn low pressure into high pressure and high pressure into low pressure. They can use lasers to do it. All of this, the weather was the first big job of what I call the space fence. And the space fence is basically, and the whole book goes into this, basically it's far beyond 2 installations in the South Pacific. It is using everything that is electromagnetic, right down to your cell phone, right down to the cell towers, to the wind farms that we think are so green. They're not green. We think the fracking wells too are used. All of this I learned from my contact with Billy Hayes, the harp man, back after the 2018 book the 2014 book came out. And Billy is the one who pointed me in the direction of really reconsidering the SDI program, having come of age in this era for the sake of, yes, weather control. The space fence is about the weather control. It's also about being able to use cell towers, etc., for control over populations, for control over the atmosphere in general. Yes, it is counting space debris so that our satellites are safe up there above the Earth. But it is much more about plugging us into it here in our atmosphere. And the 5G, which is not at all one up from 4G, it's an entirely different beast with its millimeter waves and its type of antenna it's using, which is very similar to HARP's, though HARP is on a large scale. And that 5G will avail them of our nervous systems through the IoT, the Internet of Things that's all around us, everywhere I look, so that we can be a controlled, an absolutely controlled population. And that to me is really why I work so hard. I am not pleased that we now have a technology in place that can turn us into slaves without our even knowing it, that can alter our moods so that we wonder if we're even sane anymore, that can target us remotely, our brains, our nervous systems, our moods, our health, the state of our muscles. All of this, which we have in our compartment up here in our head saying mind control and maybe targeting, this is now all part of what I call the space fence lockdown. And that goes all the way up to the above the planet, Richie. That goes to the satellites, that goes to the rockets that are being sent up into space for their parabolic journeys to test the sensors up there, the nano sensors by the trillions that we're breathing in down here, the heavy metals that are going up out of the fuel chamber of the rockets, spewing all the way across big cities, all the way up to the upper atmosphere. And all of that debris, which is all nanotech, some of it ends up being around the planet, spinning with the centrifugal force, and eventually settling around the equator as a ring around the planet, very much looking like Saturn, which is why I have the cover of the second book looking the way it does. And that between that ring forming and down here, with all the heavy metals in our atmosphere that we're breathing in, and then you have all the fracking wells, the cell towers, the radar installations, the NEXRADs, all of this equipment, all of it pulsing. Between those two, we're sandwiched in there. And this is not good for all of life on Earth.
There's no getting away from it. Who would want to do this?
No way to get away from it, but to ameliorate the effects. Now, that's what we're now, a lot of us who are very aware of this reality, the new reality, we're all looking into that and experimenting on our own bodies have become laboratories.
Let's talk about that in a second. Elana Freeland is our guest, elanafreeland.com. This is really important stuff. Check out the books, by the way, because we're talking in broad strokes. Well, Elana isn't. She's given great detail here, but it's broad strokes compared to the books. Chemtrails, HARP and the Full Spectrum Dominance of Earth, and Under an Ionized Sky, From Chemtrails to Space Fence Lockdown, where she lays out in great detail, but in a way that's easy to understand, why she's made these conclusions. I've got to ask the question that the skeptics will be screaming at me. They will say, why? Why would anybody want to do this? This sounds like James Bond villain stuff. This could be Christopher Walken in A View to a Kill in James Bond. Who would want to do this? To devastate life on planet Earth as we know it, to devastate our own health. What cabal of people, what person would engineer these programs to transform human experience? Why? Who and why do you think?
Well, and it does go to transforming not just human experience, but transforming the human itself. Transhumanism. And it is definitely one of the big objectives of all of this. It may seem bizarre to completely take over the environment and weaponize it. I mean, that's basically what's happened, Richie, is our environment, our love of nature, natura, this great being that has been written about. Poems, symphonies have been written to nature. This force that has been our mother from time immemorial. Who in the world would attack nature? I mean, a lot of people think it's just because these people don't care about nature. They're willing to sacrifice various things about nature. But I really, having studied these so-called people for a long time, decades, in fact, for when I wrote my Sub Rosa America series, I did 10 years of deep study, or I read over 100 books. I mean, I was on the trail of what I now call the global elites in order to understand how different they are from you and me, how differently they are raised, how differently they are raised to think, and what their deepest aspirations are that go back into history, centuries. And this may be way over the pay grade of some of your listeners to think so big. But I mean, how much bigger can you think if you're going to take over an entire planet and weaponize the entire planet? As Rosalie Bertell, the great epidemiologist, wrote a book in years before mine, which basically posited that the planet was being weaponized. So this is done for the sake of the space enterprise. Now, enterprise, there's that word, right? We were pre-programmed by that show, Star Trek, I think it was.
Star Trek.
And for decades and decades. And that's really what we're involved in. In his book, Covert Wars and Breakaway Civilizations, Joseph Farrell spelled out Soviet astronomer Nikolai Kardashev's 3 phases of technological achievement that any civilization must acquire that is aspiring to a space age. And the first one, and then there are 2 more. The first one is full spectrum dominance of the planet. Planetary control, absolute. And we don't mean just the physical laws. We don't mean Newtonian laws here. We mean the whole thing, including its people, including its creatures. I mean, we have genetics going on now that are just make you cringe.
As bad as the Nazis. As bad as some of the stuff that was going on. Sorry to interrupt.
All connected. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I mean, tell me an issue that's technological and scientific going on, and I will probably find a connection to what I'm calling the space fence lockdown. This is it. And we are here. When Kardashev went on to the next 2 phases to be able to acquire a space age are just mind-boggling. Control over one star and its systems, the sun. So, when I get a piece of news like I did this morning that there's a hole in the upper atmosphere of the sun and we're going to get solar wind, et cetera, I'm wondering, how did that hole appear?
Get there, yeah.
What is going on with our star. So, and then the third step of Kardashev's model is control over one's galaxy and its systems. I mean, can it be that these hubris guys, these psychopaths, these sociopaths, these people who love their science so much they're willing to sacrifice any number of people, any number of regions of the Earth? Can it be that they actually are thinking about controlling the galaxy? Yes, I think they are.
They might
That's
be.
exactly what I think.
Here's a question. I've had it said to me by researchers over the years, some researchers. They've said that throughout history, we have known or come to know a group of people called the Illuminati. Now, the Illuminati, the Enlightened, not affiliated with any particular race and not affiliated with any particular religion, but the Illuminati, and that they've operated throughout human history, and that one of the things that the Enlightened have begun to believe over years, and there's been so many little clues that we've had over the years. We've had things like, the Queen's husband, Prince Philip, saying that if I was reincarnated, I'd like to be reincarnated as a virus to wipe out, to kill most of humanity. Now, that's a very strange thing to say. It's not something, isn't it? And it's not something you would even say as a joke. I think he was serious. And I think throughout history, there have been those who have believed that the planet is better off without most of us. And I wonder, is that something to consider, taking into account everything that you've spoken about today and that you've written about? Are there those? And maybe there is some supernatural element to this. I wouldn't rule it out at all. I don't want to sound stupid. I don't want to demean this conversation at all. But maybe there are those who maybe think they are connected to a higher power, who think that we are better off without most people on the planet. And then we need to be in control in some way of those who are left. I don't know if that sounds ridiculous to you.
No, not at all. I think what all of this is saying is we need to really rethink a lot of things that we've been conditioned to believe and disbelieve. We now need to really go through this. I mean, I admit I was shocked, and this will tie in with what you're saying, Richie. I was shocked when I was doing the research into nanotechnology for the previous book. I came across some descriptions of nanotechnology. Now, a nano is 1/1000th of a meter. So you're talking so tiny, you will not be able to see it unless you have a very expensive instrument. So the nanotech is considered to be the very threshold of the quantum world. And the quantum world, whether or not it is what we are told it is, it appears to have different dimensions to it. So that it's sort of like, I don't want to get too scientific here, but a while back we had the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, which really shocked Western scientists, that you think something is there and you're measuring it, but as soon as you start measuring it, it like disappears. It's not there, and then it arises somewhere else, and then you try to measure it again, it arises somewhere else. So we're dealing with different dimensions, and I hear various rumors. I hear that some scientists have discovered 12 dimensions. We think there are 4, 3 spatial and 1 time dimension. But there are many other dimensions. So we need to think about going from physics to metaphysics. We need to consider this. And certainly the Illuminati is a term that has been trashed, just like chemtrails was trashed. Yeah. Just like so many, quote, conspiracy theories have been hooted out of range by the media, but that always makes it more interesting to me, because why would they spend the energy on doing that, on discrediting that? So there must be something to it. In the case of the Illuminati way lens, we can look through at what's going on with the globe. Yes, I think that transhumanism is the objective. I think that there are men on earth who would be as gods. and it has been a desire for many, many millennia, who understand that there is a divine world and that they want none of it. They want this planet, at least, for their own. And now it seems that they also want the sun and the solar system and maybe the galaxy too. However that is, whether it sounds preposterous or not, you have to see that they are trashing culture, they're trashing civilization through their instrument of the media. They're turning people into I won't even use the word beasts, because a beast is simply a beast. But for a human to lose its culture, which sort of gives it elements of greatness and allows them to dream and to move into something greater than just meat boxes and useless eaters. This is being done very intentionally, which is why I've never owned a television. I do not own a cell phone. These are, to me, weapons, military weapons, used against my mind. I try to find everything out for myself, and then choose people who I can trust, who also know some things, so I don't always have to reinvent the wheel. And I cling to culture. I cling to it because it is a life raft in a world being run by madmen, as far as I'm concerned. And my job, my task as a person, as the soul that I am, the spiritual being that I am, is to fight tooth and nail by understanding how they think, by being available to the people whom I love, whether they choose to be a couch potato for the rest of their life or not. I do not want them turned into slaves by a remote wireless system subject to the space fence of Lockheed Martin. I do not want that to happen. So I'm fighting very hard to inform the public. We are free will beings. They have to make their own decision. There is no Martin Luther King coming to save us. And we saw what happened to him anyway. So we're on our own here, Richie. And the first thing we need is some intelligence and some life decisions about how we're living, and to really take hold of our lives and not just go along with the program, because it is a program, and they are attempting to prepare us for a transhumanist slavery while they themselves become so-called immortal by stealing the minds and thoughts in brain-computer interfaces so that they will live forever. That's absolutely I love your British expression, gobsmacking.
Gobsmacking,
I can't believe anyone would even want to do that.
No. Elana Freeland is our guest. Elana, stay with me for another 10 minutes or thereabouts, if you can.
Yes.
Because there's a few more things we'll get into. It's ElanaFreeland.com. Stunned, but very proud for you, not of you, because we've only ever spoken on radio shows over the years. I've never met you, but who knows, please God, someday in the future I'll get to buy you a cup of coffee, we'll have a chat. But amazed about the television thing. It's a great thing to be able to say that you have eschewed television and smartphones. I think you're absolutely right to do that. I want to say to you, by the way, as well, because I think it was around about 4 years or thereabouts when I first got in touch with you, but you've been writing and talking about these things for quite a long time. When you see Elon Musk talking about sticking a brain implant, a chip into people's brains, and that they're going to start trialing that on people within the next 12 months, that vindicates you. And you're a great human being, Elana, because you don't brag. You've not got an ounce of kind of bravado or kind of bragging about you or ego, which I find really, really great. I find it really nice. You've been vindicated, because this is the sort of thing that you were saying, quite a long time ago. We're going to get there. We're going to get to a point where people will willingly queue up and demand, yes, please, give me an operation. Here was Elon Musk last week explaining how the surgical procedure would work. And I swear to God, on his own social media pages, or on social media pages which are belonging to companies that he's involved in, there were thousands of people saying, me, please, me. Put a microchip in my brain, Elana. Well, you've been vindicated. We've arrived at that point now.
Yes, I'm sorry to say we have. I'm sorry to say, Richie, that there is not one so-called conspiracy theory that I have not been right about over the last 40 years. Unfortunately, there are people who, if they spend enough time and energy in probing for the truth, it's sort of like why I like Sherlock Holmes things so much, books, movies. I really love detective stories, especially British. I feel I am one because I'm searching through a lot of detritus, a lot of debris that's all the way from rumor to and hearsay to the patent office and papers and trying to figure out relationships between scientists and industry and that sort of thing. I'm constantly probing. Where's the truth? And it's all about clinging fast to what a human being can really be. A lot of people despise human beings as being like our masters, I suppose, these kind of low, desire-driven, couch potato, useless eaters. No, that is not the picture of humanity that I was raised with. I had a classical education, as America goes, not on the order of Britain, but I read the classics as a kid. I loved the great human beings, even the great the great criminals who you could get inside their minds and see how they worked and where they went wrong. The idea of the good, the true, and the beautiful that the Greeks gave us, all that stuff is real to me. That's like reality to me. And then I live in my era, right? And my era is being taken apart. And I realize it's not falling apart because human beings are such low creatures. No, not at all. We are under assault by what you would call the Illuminati, and I'm comfortable with that term. Something has happened to these people. I know now how some of them are raised. I am a great opponent of the British public school, sending a boy off to these schools where they will be raped and prepared for pedophilia and use the rest of their lives for the sake of class. Makes no sense to me. That is not what my American principle stands for. Here we're dealing with savagery, and I, for one, am trying to see a way through for people and give them some guidance now instead of just the intellect, which I'm very comfortable with. I love intellect. I love footnotes, all that stuff. But I see now I need to talk to people straight on and encourage them that not only will we survive this era, we will find ways to survive physically, emotionally, spiritually, and we will triumph because this is wrong. And the good, the true, and the beautiful never stand truly with what is wrong and evil and destructive. Nope, never has happened in the history. It will not happen now.
It's a lovely sentiment, that. And you also just a minute ago described in a way that I couldn't, and a beautiful use of language there, describing about the public schools. This is exactly how the psychopaths who hold the highest offices are created over the years, because I've obviously worked in commercial media for some big companies as well as being independent, and I've interviewed people who've gone to public schools, the elite schools, and the stories they tell about the things that boys are subjected to in these schools, ritual humiliation, sexual humiliation, bullying that's unimaginable. And each generation of boys in the school does it to the boys in the year underneath him. And it goes on. Only last year I had a famous author who went to one of these schools. He described the things that the boys do to one another. And out of these schools come the leaders of European countries, psychopaths. Yes. And they inflict psychosis on populations. You know, vote for me, I'll lower taxes and everything will be rosy. But of course, not only do they not lower taxes and make things easier for people, they do things that they never mentioned when they were campaigning, like they bomb Yemen to pieces, they bomb Iraq and Afghanistan to pieces. These lunatics, and you've described that absolutely brilliantly. That's how they get there. And then
that's how they get there.
So that answers the question earlier on. Why would they turn a blind eye to or participate in the space fence, in geoengineering, knowing the devastation it does? Well, because they're psychotic.
Yes,
doesn't matter.
This is how it's done. They're raised to dominate. They're raised to dominate. And we do the same with our top 10 schools here too, Richie. We learned from the British. Yes, we did.
The same thing. Can I ask you this before we part company for today? And thanks for your time today, and thanks for bearing with the technical problems, Elana. I love having you on. I love you for what you do in your books, and I'm looking forward to your next book coming out, and you will give us a mention of it before we part company today. Elana Freeland is our guest, elanafreeland.com. Great friend of mine, the actress Jean-Anne Crowley, who's been a great friend to me and this program, but she's also a great friend to independent researchers in general. She's a great promoter of the independent media. She loves listening to you, and Jean-Anne asks, where did it begin for you? Was there a eureka moment for you in your life? Did you notice something was wrong? And if so, what was that? It's a great question, I think.
Well, and for this particular area of geoengineering, I have to give full credit to my friendship with independent scientist Clifford Carnicom. When I was living in New Mexico, and so was Clifford and his wife Carol, we would all go out to breakfast, and Clifford and I would end up spending hours on what he was finding under his microscope, and by collecting all the precipitation and the detritus in his HEPA filter that was coming directly from the jets overhead in that wonderful azure blue sky of northern New Mexico. That was where I began. I did the red wine test and spit into a jar, and there were fibers moving on their own in what I spit out. Very shocking. And then drawing blood and looking under the microscope and seeing that whatever was in those fibers, and the fiber was just the outer covering of it, was sucking the iron out of my red blood cells. And that was it for me. I said, this is terrible. This is everyone who's breathing this has this in them. I have to assume that, even though our sample at that time was quite small. Now, I'd had biology, and biology was my second major undergrad, but I had not touched it in all these years. And now, I realized that I really had to look seriously at this. And then I was given the opportunity by my publisher, Adam Parfrey, who now, unfortunately, I feel, is dead. And he said, can you write a book on chemtrails? And so I did that. And then out of that, thanks to Billy Hayes, I went on to the second book. So that's kind of how I live. I go from mission to mission, I always say. But one thing leads to another, right? I mean, you find some things out and you have to keep going. This next book on synthetic biology and transhumanism comes directly from the previous two books, from what I've learned, how it works under the space fence lockdown. And this hopefully will be the last book I write on this topic. I'm waiting for others to start writing. I'm waiting for scientists to develop the courage to come forward and take a risk, because what really is at risk here is humanity, the future of humanity. Will we be brain-computer interfaces? Will we be cyborgs? Or will we be able to continue on our journey to developing true human consciousness that has greatness in it and has kindness and forgiveness and many of the strengths that are now seen as weakness and needing of enhancement? This is what my hope is, that those who know even more than I do and can come and write, even though hardly anyone reads anymore, Richie, but I really feel I'm writing these books for the future, that at least a few people were aware of what was happening and spoke out in the written form and not just in YouTube's. This is what I'm doing this summer. I need to be done by fall, and I'm working every day on it.
Well, look, go back to it then. We've taken up enough of your time. Thanks for coming back on again. And do me a favour, drop me a message when the book is ready so that we can schedule a chat. I really hear you loud and clear. The written word is hugely important. It really is, because it's part of our humanity. It's part of what makes us human. And there's nothing like reading, you know.
But the thinking, Richie, just let me put a pitch in there for thinking. They've destroyed our love of thinking. They've destroyed our love of books in the terrible education systems they've subjected us to. And then we have these wonderful, easy, eye candy type of videos where we can go into alpha wave in our brain. Alpha wave is what they want, they being the global elites, because we will not be thinking in beta wave or in delta wave. So I'm telling people to please learn to read again. Please learn to read, because you can think then, and you can think by not being manipulated by whoever made the video. You can go back a few pages, you can consider it, you can throw the book across the room and not read it anymore. You can do a lot of things with the books. This is not an antiquated form anymore, but people are losing the ability to concentrate because of the heavy metals in them, and they need to get those heavy metals out, have detox. Go for heavy metal detox. Should be at least a monthly activity to get that out so you can concentrate and retain. Yeah.
Brilliant stuff, Elana. Thanks for that. Good luck with the rest of the summer and the writing. And when you're ready to go then with the book, I'll give the book as much publicity as I can, because I know it'll be as fascinating and as insightful as your previous books. And the thing about you coming on when those books were published, our listeners are serious people and they don't pull any punches. And the word has always been that your books are incredibly valuable and very interesting and important and very well briefed. And let's be honest about it, they're cutting edge. So I look forward to you coming back on very soon. Not at all. And thanks for your time today, and thanks for putting up with the technical issues. I'm glad we got there in the end. It's ElanaFreeland.com, folks, and I'll speak to you real soon, Elana. Thanks again for today.
Bye, Richie.
And bye for now.